The two things that seem most impressive to me in what he does in the last 30 years of his life is, first of all, he radically fills in the pieces of what this elusive dark night of the spirit means in Christian terms. And this was a term, of course, that was introduced for the first time by John of the Cross, maybe, 300 or 400 years earlier. But few people have actually described it because few people have actually walked it. John of the Cross describes it as a deeper kind of purgation, characterized by these sort of squizzly sounding things like a spirit of blasphemy and vertigo and weariness. Thomas lives into it. He distinguishes just how different it is from the earlier dark night, the dark night of sense, which Thomas brilliantly repositions as the deconstruction of the false self system. But this other dark night is a deeper and a kind of mysterious dark night. And Thomas lives through it and gives us a very clear description of what it's like. Little did I know when I first met Thomas that he was just at that point entering this dark night. And he remained in it for most of the 1990s, for most of the first decade that we really associated and worked together. And it had the usual external effects of, very often this second dark night is combined with physical depression or injury or illness, which was the case with Thomas. He just lost vitality for about 6 or 7 years. It looked like chronic fatigue syndrome. Nobody could ever really pinpoint the diagnosis, but he was immobilized energetically. This is all part of the picture. There was a lot going on in his life that was just really deep body blows, the death of some of his closest associates, some treachery in the network that he just founded, deep, bitter heart grievances. But he soldiers on bravely and describes in enriching detail this disorientation of perspective that comes as a typical and very upsetting part of this dark night. His classic dark night poem is in the Secret Embrace in the Twilight of the Self. It's called the Twilight of the Self. It's the fourth poem. And some of the lines that just describe this state of limbo, the spirit of blasphemy, where all of a sudden, you just can't get excited about God and religion and all the things that carried you. You actually want to have the whole damn inconvenience off your back. And Thomas writes in this 1991 poem, I move in aimless circles, rituals and sacred symbols, once treasured sources of relating to you, you being God, are meaningless to me now. They communicate nothing of you, who are everything to me, but for whom and from whom I feel no love nor hope of fulfillment. And if you notice the paradox right in there, you'll see that paradox, that everything's turned upside down, is part of the syndrome in this particular dark night. Everything's topsy-turvy. He writes, my sole desire is you, and you are always absent. Can one love absence so intensely that even your presence seems like an intrusion? But finally, this poignant line, the God I thought I knew no longer exists. And, a lot of people say they read this poem when Mary Jane Yates published it in one of those contemplative outreach, newsletters a while back. People were shocked, not ready for this. Did dear old lovable Thomas lose his faith? Well, they asked the same thing of Mother Teresa, without picking up that this is absolutely characteristic of this dark night. The whole mechanism that used to feed you energy and give you joy and all that disappears. But what's happening underneath all that disruption of the surface appearances? A new system of perception is beginning to kick in that will allow you to perceive God and be with God in a whole different way. So it's not, well, here I am having an experience of God. Something else becomes possible that almost defies languaging for people that haven't tasted it, which is why this is so hard. So Thomas really allows us to see what this actually feels like when we're going through it. And I would say that for those of you who are, you know, in your 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on, maybe some even earlier, who've been at centering prayer for a long time now, uh, that some of what you read here may seem familiar, because it seems to be the very natural trajectory of this prayer to lead us to this dark night and through it without ever changing course. So it both helps in the deconstruction of these last shreds of the God I thought I knew, and at the same time begins to lay in place and has been gradually building this structure, which will allow you to more quickly pick up the God who is as your consciousness shifts and reintegrates at a deeper level. And that's what this dark night is all about.